Jenny's head teacher of, Frederick Bremer School in Walthamstow, North East London, which had the Channel 4 treatment in educating the East End. Vic and Jenny are going to be talking to us about life beyond the lens, what community schools offer beyond GCSE results to help young people not just survive but thrive. The challenges and complexities facing the heads of these schools and why they both chose to feature in Channel 4's Educating series. We're also joined by an inspirational young person. Arifa Nasim attends school in Walthamstow and he's going to talk to us about her experience of going to a community school in London and what she gains from her education there. I'll tell you a bit more about each panellist before they speak, but I'll introduce myself first. I'm Sarah Simons, and as you may have gathered, I'm chairing this afternoon's session. I teach in an FE college in the East Midlands and I write and broadcast for the TES. Before I moved into education, I worked in TV and theatre for going up 20 years, so I'm especially interested in how education is represented on screen. TV programmes such as the Educating series have dual purposes. On one hand, they offer an insight into real-life schools with staff and students sharing their daily lives. On the other hand, their lives are creating content for an entertainment show. To me, these are two very different motivations. I'd be really interested to hear about how they work in parallel to provide authenticity and entertainment, and if it's actually possible to have an authentic representation when you know cameras are watching and when you know that sometimes complex, difficult, messy days are going to be part of a narrative arc. After all three guests have spoken, we're going to open the floor to you. So as you're listening, have a think of some brilliant questions, please. Right, so let's crack on with our first speaker, Vic Godard. Council estate, born and raised. Vic has worked his way up through the system from PE teacher via head of department to being one of the most high-profile, controversial, innovative and bluntly passionate head teachers. His passion for education, an education that refuses to accept limits in what young people and the teachers are capable of, is matched by his genuine zeal for educational leadership. In 2011, we got to see him in action in Educating Essex, and in his own words, if you saw the programme, you'll recognise me, I'm the one crying. Ladies and gentlemen, Vic Godard.
Afternoon, well done, you made it after lunch and you were awake. I never write anything. If you've ever heard me speak at a conference, I don't write anything. But I did today, and now I've written it, I realise it's a rant. So I'm going to rant for about 3 minutes, okay? So bear with me. I think we've probably seen enough evidence around structural change in schools and how that doesn't change schools and doesn't improve them in its own right. So my drive around being a community school is very much one about a model that I think does work myself. Being a community school for me isn't about anything other than the mindset. Every school is a community school. It sits within a community. And to say we're a community school, therefore this is what we do, is nonsense in my mind. There's no typical community school in the country, because every community school mirrors its community, and communities are different. There are occasions when I've spoken with fellow school leaders, especially over the last couple of years, with the pressures of accountability, the really high stakes accountability, where some of my colleagues have forgotten that they serve the community doesn't serve them. And actually, it's not the community's job to deliver these rounded human beings that are perfect for us to be able to teach them and teach brilliantly. It's actually for us to help create those for the community. And I think that's lost sometimes, and I think the accountability structure has a lot to do with that. Previous Ofsteds, community cohesion was the key. Unfortunately, it's been replaced by British values. But in some ways, that's a good thing. I remember our Ofsted inspection when community cohesion was a big thing, and I filled the matrix in. For those that have been in a school leadership situation, I know what that means. You had a big piece of paper with how you serve the local, the national, the international communities, and I filled it in and it looked great, but it meant nothing. But it ticked the Ofsted box, and we got a 1 for community cohesion. Well, it was great. But actually, it took our minds off what we were really about. The word values has been in schools ever since schools existed. It's just the unnecessary aspect of the Britishness, which is worrying, really. It's a shame the accountability framework makes us tick boxes rather than actually understand what our community needs. We can't take away from the fact that we all serve our communities by educating their young people and helping more and more students to get better and better examination results. That's a key part of what we do. The quickest way out of deprivation is a good set of exam results and a good, well-rounded education. Without a shadow of a doubt, that's what's going to change our community long term. However, if we're not producing the young adults that are community focused and understand their rights within the community and their responsibilities to it, then actually we're missing out. What's great about our community school, we're an academy. I publicly support my governor's decision to become an academy back 4 years ago. But what's changed? Well, nothing, if I'm honest, because of that change. What the biggest change for us is we moved from an old building to a new building and the community wanted to use it. So if I think what's gone on in my school this week, so currently today we have the Islamic school in one wing and the Polish school in another wing. We have 2 performing arts academies going on, numerous youth-focused sports and recreation activities. I think this evening we've got some line dancing going on. On Thursday we had our Silver Surfers ICT Coffee Club, which is always great, and Doris tells me every Thursday that she was the first head's PA at my school 60 years ago. That's what the community aspect is for me. And actually, if I'm being a cynical head teacher, those people leaving my school, having had a good experience, go out into our community and sell my school. The best people are my Silver Surfers. They sit in the hairdressers and they talk about what a great time they had at Bartlemore's learning how to malmerge or take digital photographs or whatever it may be. Actually meeting those that community need for me is the key part. Great community schools don't create the society we live in, they are a reflection of it, but they do change it over time. And I absolutely aspire to making our community a better community by what we're doing. The first paragraph of our ill-fated SEF, I hate SEFs by the way, but they're a good process to go through. It says that we are changing Harlow by one child at a time. That when these children become parents in Harlow, they will have had a good time at school, and therefore they will be engaged parents. That's changing the community. That's the community school aspect for me. This is my ranty bit. The problem is we have a political system where too many key decision makers have no concept of what being part of that community and our community is. It's a worrying thing that until they truly understand how a community school works within that community, for that community, and by that community, because let's be honest, I think 0.92 of a mile is the furthest any student lives from my school currently. That's quite a condensed little aspect of life. So from my point of view, we have to make sure that we reflect but also improve what we're doing by mirroring what's in the community. I love the fact that my school is open at 7 in the morning and full, and closed at 10 at night and still full. This week we had productions going on until whatever time, and we had hundreds of visitors. I hope that today we will have almost as many young people in my school as I had yesterday. And today's Saturday. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm only talking about the telly from now on. Okay? Nothing but the telly. Thanks.
Thanks very much. That was brilliant. Our next speaker is Jenny Smith. Jenny's head teacher of Frederick Bremer School in Walthamstow, a diverse community school of 900 pupils, which was recently featured in Channel 4's Educating the East End. Her passion is part derived from seeing the fundamental impact the 11 Plus exam had on her family and friends growing up in the London borough of Sutton. Jenny joined the school in 2012, which was her first headship, having previously worked for 8 years as deputy head teacher in Hammersmith and Haringey. She came into teaching late after studying modern history and politics at Sheffield University, then pursuing a wide range of alternative careers, from teaching English in rural Greece, smashing plates in a Greek restaurant in Sheffield, to running a video shop. Jenny remains an active teacher and a passionate advocate for the craft of the classroom. Let's welcome Jenny Smith.
Thank you. I have a few visuals that I'm going to be sharing with you through this presentation. And the theme of what I want to talk to you about is a very personal vision about what I believe community education is about. Echoing very much what Vic has said about how community schools serve local communities, and that is not the other way around. And what I'm going to talk to you about is part of a reflective journey I have been on for about 15 years. And I feel at the moment like I'm an individual who is out of sync with the prevailing mood. And I've started to ask myself the question, when I look at what is happening in education, and I look at what's happening in schools around me, am I the one who is actually wrong? Am I holding on to a distant anachronism, a nostalgic element of what times were, the community schools, with a really important social and cohesive function? Or really, have things moved on there? And have schools got a really critical economic function, there to serve individuals, there to be competitive and respond to demand? And I'm going to argue why, in this transient world, that community cohesion is a given, and why we have got to make sure that we continue to celebrate, protect, and enhance community education, particularly in the light of what's happening in our communities today and in the future. And my thinking came from a number of things, and it started on that tube line back in 2005. And back in 2005, I was working in a school over in Hammersmith and Fulham, and I used to commute for an hour from Finsbury Park to Hammersmith, taking a long journey down the Piccadilly line. And every day, a young man joined me on that bus to Hammersmith, and he couldn't have been any more than year 7. And he stood at the bus stop in the rain, in the wind, but predominantly in the dark at 6:30 in the morning, in his school uniform, proud of his logo, with his personalised backpack, his violin in one hand, his sports kit in the other. And he followed me onto the bus and down into the tube and all the way to Hammersmith, where we then parted, and he went to one school and I went to the other. And it asked me the question about what is it about London education that somebody is going to travel at 11 years old for an hour each way every day. It's not as if there aren't state schools in North London. It's not as if we're short of secondaries. So why is he travelling for over an hour? And we sat in mutual silence on the same carriage of the same tube for quite a long time. But I didn't think of him again until a few months later, when I was walking home on the afternoon of the 7th of July 2005, quite a long walk from Hammersmith to Finsbury Park, the day that the heart had got torn out of London and out of our communities. And I wondered what that young boy would think about those events which had killed members of our local community, people who lived a couple of streets down from that bus stop where he got on his bus every day. How would it have resonated with him? How would he be thinking as he travels across London every day without the roots in the community that he lives in? Moving on to September 2012, when I started as a head teacher in Frederick Bremer. A question I always ask myself is, how did that happen? But that's not what I'm going to be talking about now. This was what was happening on the streets of Walthamstow in September 2012. The weekend I started work, the EDL paid Walthamstow a visit, and they wanted to share their views with the local residents about what they thought about multiculturalism and diversity and the Muslim population living in that area. And not only was it interesting that they had chosen to visit E17, but what was equally interesting was the response from the local area. People came out on force. People from every demographic, every local area, every local community came out to discuss, debate, passively object or actively object to the presence of these people on our streets. And it was an interesting induction into Walthamstow politics and an interesting insight into the strength of that local community, and actually starting to reflect on where does this depth of community spirit come from? Where is it formed, especially now as there are so few community institutions and organisations for people to mix and for people to get to know each other? Schools do have an important part to play in this, particularly now in this current light with extremism moving to a different area. So today, I am quite a confused head teacher. I'm not entirely sure of the direction of travel. and it has been sorely tested, my visions and my passion, over the last few years. And I have got great hope for the future of community education, but I am uncertain of its future. It does seem a strange time, with that in mind, to put my school in the spotlight. But I put the school in the spotlight with full consultation with all stakeholders for these very reasons. There is a myth about what happens in schools like ours. There is a perception that there are problems. And these problems were brought to life for me very starkly when we first started to hit media attention. And this was the very first article which appeared in the newspapers when it was announced that we were going to be the next educating school. Struggling school, underachieving, full of kids that don't speak English. I had the biggest number of complaints about this article from my kids and from my parents than I have over any other issue since I've been a head teacher. Young people came up to me and went, "What are they talking about, miss? This is not our school. How dare they say that? And how dare they say that you are being parachuted in to save our school? This is not true. We feel misrepresented." And it was from this position that we started to really engage with what we need to do to change that perception and change those myths about what community schools are there for. But the perceptions don't stop there. The perceptions are also there in terms of the behaviour myths about our young people. This was another article that went out just before the first episode was broadcast, saying that schools like ours are out of control, that we have unruly pupils. We have pupils who wear piercings and large amounts of makeup with no respect for authority, and teachers are doing their best in the face of this adversity. Our young people deserve better than this. The young people I work with are exciting, engaging, resilient, full of energy, full of zest. And I don't understand why this myth is being perpetuated about what goes on in schools like ours. And the final thing, which shocked me, angered me, and upset me in the media attention for schools, is how people working in schools are portrayed. Teachers have been given a terrible press recently. And again, one of the first things that was said before the first episode was that the only way I control a school like this is by wearing high heels. Now, at best, that is laughable, but actually, it's insulting. Schools are incredibly complex organisations, and one of the things that documentaries like Educating show is the complexities of what we do day in, day out. Young people are complex, teachers are complex, staff are complex, institutions are complex, and what we do is a very finely skilled occupation, which at the heart of it has great relationships and great compassion, and that is the kind of thing that came shining through. It is very hard to have 70-odd cameras pointing at you all day. It is very hard to watch it back on television, warts and all, seeing every single thing that you don't like, everything exposed, everything magnified, some things being shown worse than they are. But actually, when you got beneath that superficial level, what it did show was how all of the functions of an organisation and all the people within an organisation work together so fantastically and so cohesively. And for me as a head, it gave me a fresh perspective on how fantastic schools like ours are, and it gave me a fresh energy to actually continue with doing what I think is ethically, morally and principally right for the young people of our borough. So I hope that you will share with me the view that community schools aren't an anachronism. They are, in fact, the future. It's a shame that we do not get better press and better attention for the very, very important work that we do for our areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was brilliant. Our final speaker is Arifa Nasim. After reading Daughters of Shame, aged 14, Arifa joined the fight against FGM, forced marriage and honour-based violence. With a group of friends in Year 11, she initiated a campaign at her school, raising funds and awareness. She's currently balancing studying for her A-levels and giving talks to continue raising awareness for her campaign, and hopes to study politics and international relations following a gap year next year. She is surely an inspirational, motivated young person that we could all learn from. So let's have a round of applause for Arifa Nasim.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the Institute of Education for this opportunity. It's not every day that something like this comes by. My name is Arifa Nasim. I'm 17 years old and I'm currently studying for my A-levels, which are around the corner. It's an honour and a privilege to be here today and share with you my story and my journey of becoming a campaigner and the value of community education and the part that it has played in my personal development. It has made me an intrinsically motivated individual. I love what I do, I believe in it, and the strong sense of moral purpose and the values that I have now, I've received from my community education, an education that was not based solely on attainment, but also wanted to contribute to the wider individual that I am. My school, Walthamstow School for Girls, I went to when I was 11 years old, and one thing that was there almost all the time in every assembly that we had was their motto, neglect not the gift that is in thee. And just to add context to our school, 32% of the students that go there have English as an additional language. It's not their first language. And 46% of pupils are entitled to pupil premium, which is something that I was also entitled to when I went there. And this is a measure of disadvantage, of social and economic disadvantage. Growing up in the school that I did gave me a sensitivity to local issues and the local context, and made me aware of how culturally diverse and socially diverse our area is. Waltham Forest is a very unique borough. The cohesion and the dynamic there is unparalleled. All of these ingredients together create a unique borough and allows us to progress. If you step out of Waltham Forest, you'd be hard-pressed to find schools like we do have, and the challenges that people face. Now, I can only speak for myself, and the challenges that I've personally faced as a young Muslim woman and as a campaigner are quite huge. People expect girls like me to have no aspiration. They expect us to be ambitionless. They expect us to be oppressed because this is the image that the media are so often forcing down your throat. As you can see, because I'm stood here before you, that is not the case, especially with me. Now, perhaps in my community there would have been an expectation that as soon as I fulfill the obligation of having my education, maybe go to university, I'd get married and settle down and have children. I can tell you that is not what I'm going to do, categorically. Walthamstow School for Girls has empowered me completely. They embraced the learning to learn agenda, and they fully believe that intelligence is not a fixed component. Intellectual and cognitive abilities can increase and can grow through hard work and effort by building learning power, something that Professor Guy Claxton emphasises. Now, when I was at that school in all my 5 years, no one turned around and said to me, Arifa, you're really bright, well done for everything that you've done. The only thing I was ever praised for at my school was the hard work and the hours that I put in, because they recognised that this is the key to success, not natural ability. It inspired me at a very young age, so by the time I was 14 and I read Daughters of Shame by Jasmine Sangira, I was captivated. I'm going to share with you the beginning part, the passage of that book, and hopefully it will hook you the same way it hooked me. I was brought up to keep secrets, ugly secrets, about bullying, coercion, and fear, which were all part of everyday life in my family. I believed it was shameful to discuss things with outsiders, and that if I did, I would compromise our family's honour. Is it the most important thing in my mother's life? Which is why I didn't say anything when she showed me a photograph of the man she said I had to marry. I knew it wasn't right. I knew I was too young to leave school or to get married. And it felt all wrong being forced to marry a man I didn't know, but I kept quiet. That had an impact on me, aged 14, and what had a greater impact on me is one of the stories that I read in there of a woman called Uzma Arshad, and when she came to this country to marry a man who was born here, she objected, but her family forced her into it anyway. But she came here and she changed very quickly, she adapted and she became westernised, which made her husband believe that she was having an affair. So 3 children later, he left her. But then he came a year later, he came back to her, and she knew there was something wrong with this situation. She said to her brother, "Count the days before he kills me." She never for 1 second thought that he would harm her 3 children. Not only did he batter her to death with a baseball bat, he also killed their 3 small children in the same fashion, the youngest of which was a 6-year-old girl. Now, that story had a profound effect on me because these were crimes committed by my own community. I knew I had to act. I knew I had to use everything that I had inside me to fight against something that was happening in my own community, but thankfully would never happen to me because my family isn't like this. I felt, in a way, a survivor by default. So what I did was, after reading this book, I told my friends about it, I got them on board, and I tried to get a few teachers on board as well. And we were in a difficult process because we were changing head teachers. We had an interim head teacher, so it ended up being stalled. But a key component of being a youth campaigner is to understand that when people say no, you have to persevere and you have to be resilient, because not everybody is going to be on board with your idea all the time, and especially when you're a revolutionary, when you're introducing something that nobody wants to touch, you have to be resilient. So we went again and again and again, and eventually by the time our new head teacher arrived, Meryl Davis, I had a proposal, very professionally written out. I distributed it to every member of the senior leadership team beforehand, and I went into a room full of about 6 or 7 senior leaders, one of which is sitting in the audience today, and I presented my proposal. If any of you have ever been in a kind of meeting like this, you will understand that it is incredibly nerve-wracking. I had to explain to them where I was going to get the funding from, how I was going to entertain 130 people, and how I was going to raise the target of £5,000, which I had set myself. But I did. I went in, and a couple of days later, they green-lighted the project. Now, it's important to mention at the same time I was doing my GCSEs, and they were incredibly worried. But they believed in me. They knew that I had it in me. I had that gift. I was able to deliver on the promises that I'd made. And they said yes. And that huge leap of faith in my potential, that was it. That's all I needed. I just needed their green light. And so for months afterwards, we put on bake sales. We contacted solicitors. I would go in at the same time as the head teacher, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd leave 8 p.m. in the evening. And I'd go home and then I'd do some studying, etc., to try and pass my GCSEs. But we were calling up solicitors, businesses, all sorts of people for sponsorship so that they would sponsor our event, promising them advertisement, etc., on the night. We managed to pull together an event where a student, Ruby James, she wrote a whole script on forced marriage and a scenario. We had a choreographer, Catherine Phillips, who put together a contemporary dance about forced marriage. We had people looking for auction prizes, raffle prizes, and our guest speakers were, of course, Jasvinda Sangira, the author of the book, Chaz Akoshile, he's the head of the forced marriage unit, a survivor of forced marriage, and Baroness Scotland, who is an alumni of our school, who came back, and as ex-Attorney General, she presented all of the crimes committed in a forced marriage and explained why honour-based violence is the vile, horrible thing that it is. It was a hugely successful night. We had counsellors, teachers, parents in attendance, and it affected the local community, and it was a part of putting such an important issue on the national agenda, the effects of which I never knew that because I did an event 2 years ago, I'd be standing here today talking to you about it. It has spiraled and it's had this huge domino effect and has led to me going into Jenny's school, talking with Hibbo about forced marriage and FGM, with plans to go to other schools. I mean, I never considered taking a gap year either, but I'm actually being forced to because there are so many invitations coming in to talk to different schools, and it's such a huge opportunity that has to be capitalised on. An opportunity that I wouldn't have had unless I'd benefited from the community education that I had. So for me personally, it has had a huge effect on my journey and on my personal life as well. As an individual, I'm very thankful to the gift that WSFG gave to me, and I'd just like to say thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Thank you. Right, we have got just over 15 minutes for questions. So, have we got a mic? Brilliant. So, if you want to raise your hands, one of these lovely people with a microphone will come galloping towards you. If you could wait till they get there before you speak, that would be fabulous. Any questions? Have we got any questions?
Good.
That was quick.
Right, well, I'm going to start you off then. You've all talked about the community, about the school being central to the community's success. How do you communicate with the community to make sure that you're meeting the needs?
We've joined as many of the community organisations as we can. So Chamber of Commerce, we started there. So we joined as an employer in the town, we joined the Chamber of Commerce. We host as many community meetings as possible, free of charge. And so actually, for us, it's more about getting them through the door in the first place. So I think probably the community we serve has been damaged in the past by not having the education it deserved, I would imagine, I think, over the course of the years. And so there was a reticence to engage with us. So we've just literally said, you've got a community event, come and do it at Passmores and we'll support you through that. And that's broken down the barriers. And now, 14 years down the road that I've been there, the barriers are so much less than they were before. But I think it's just getting them through the door in the first place was the most challenging thing for us.
Yeah.
Sorry, I personally think that every school should have a community outreach officer like our school did. Walthamstow School for Girls had this amazing individual that was in touch with the local community and a part of the school, so she had a foot in both camps, and she would feed through opportunities and funnel through all sorts of different things from the school outwards and also from the local community into the school, and it was a great gap, a bridge, and we needed it because it just immersed the school more into the community.
Yeah, I mean, for us it was a very different challenge because we're in quite a new school and not many people really know about our school. We're known as the school on the right after home base. And actually we had to do a lot of outreach work to get, as I said, the perception of our school changed, and actually to get more members of the public into our school to see actually what amazing facilities we have and the work that we do. And that has had to happen organically through joining community forums, through networking. I met Arifa at a community event, and really then bringing the community in and encouraging the community to come in. And from that, great organic growth has happened, as with our FGM and forced marriages campaign that we're actively involved in.
Right. If I could just ask you, Arifa, you're so confident. I'm not as confident now as you are. It's just fabulous. It's just inspirational. We talked beforehand about how at your school learning's a transaction. It's two-way traffic with the learning. It's not something that's done to the young people. How important has that been in you being able to get this confidence, do these amazing things, making these huge issues something that you're going to have a say in?
I'd have to say that in the beginning, when I was growing up, my grandfather was actually a councillor, local councillor, and then he went on to be mayor of Walthamstow. So I was constantly surrounded by politicians and individuals from a young age. I mean, I'd be sitting in the back with a colouring book and a hot chocolate or something, but listening to that level of conversation from a young age does develop, does have bearing on who you become later on. But from going to Walthamstow School for Girls, I have to say the fact that there is a non-hierarchical aspect to some of the teachers there, I really benefited from that, because sometimes there is an opposition where a teacher does not want to be told what to do by a student, or does not want to see a student having the same level of authority. But something that I deeply enjoyed at Walthamstow School for Girls was being able to make my own decisions. So even with small things in terms of admin, etc., I was fully allowed to send out a letter on school letter-headed paper and sign my name off and send it off. And that's not something that every student can do. That's not something that you felt you were allowed to do. But there was a lot of rule breaking and sort of perception changing when I was running this campaign, because I was in the school, I was in actually the deputy head's office all the time on his computer, running errands, using his phone. These aren't things that students are allowed to do usually, but being comfortable in a situation where you recognise there's going to be change, you've got a student that's running a campaign that's trying to make it effective and trying to make it as professional as possible, you want to encourage that. You don't want to sort of stifle it. And in fact, I was just reminiscing with Mr. Straker today, who is the deputy head at Walthamstow School for Girls, about how he received an email a couple of days later after I'd contacted this business they were going to donate some tablecloths or something. And he had an email back saying, I've been contacted by one of your students. I can't believe how professional they were. If every student is like this, you're doing a fantastic job as a school. So it not only promotes the school and makes it improves the image of the school, it's also amazing confidence boost for every student there if they're given the responsibility and the opportunity to just express themselves and sort of recognise their own potential, which is something that they gave me. So he has always made us feel like his door is always open for a chat, and he can learn more from you than you can from him. There's a lot to be said about humility and being humble as a teacher and allowing that two-way dialogue, because if you are there in a position of authority and you want to assert that authority, a student is never going to be fully comfortable, although authority is incredibly important in creating that the discipline which you need with some students. There also has to be a two-way dialogue.
Yeah, you talk about hierarchy and unity of schools. Something that I'd like to put to you two, from watching the TV shows, the educating series, something that leapt out at me as a teacher is how solid both of your teams of staff are. The teachers, the leadership teams, it just feels like one really solid unit. What do you think you do differently to have such a happy workforce?
I don't think I do. No, I don't think I do. We fight all the time, and this didn't show it. No, that's not true. It's about teachers come into the profession with a very shared purpose. The vast majority, there's very few that don't. So if you embody that as the head, and don't forget that it's not about Ofsted. Who cares what they think? If one parent in your community trusts you with their child, what bigger compliment can you ever have? For Year 6 parents, sits in that meeting in October as we're flogging our schools to try and fill it up for the next year, and looks at me and goes, actually Vic, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you with my most precious gift. Then if that's the most important thing to me, and I live that, and my staff see that, they've got to share that.
Yeah.
And if they don't share that, it's incredibly uncomfortable, and one of us is going to leave. And as they're carrying me out in a box, it's not going to be me. So I think there is some attrition around that. I think you lose people on the way, and actually that doesn't mean they're a bad teacher. It doesn't mean they're not good at their job. It just means that we don't fit. The jigsaw doesn't match, and that's fine. And if I lose some staff on the way because of that, that's absolutely fine. They'll go off and probably have a career somewhere else and do brilliantly. And it's holding that truth to yourself, and why I'm the teacher. I happen to be the head, but if anybody asks me in a pub what I do, I'm a teacher. I don't say I'm a head teacher, even though most of the time these days I tend to know.
And Jenny, what would you say that you do at your school?
I think, echoing what Vic said, it's not necessarily something that's conscious. It tends to be far more instinctive for me, that people who come to work at our school do so for a particular vision, and they share our values, and we really emphasise that as part of our recruitment process. And we believe that everybody in the school, student, teacher, head teacher, we have equal roles to play in that school. Yes, we do different jobs, but we all have equal roles. And the most important thing that we work on is developing that trust between all of the individuals within the organisation. And it's what Arifa was mentioning about, actually, when young people trust their teachers, when young people trust each other, that is where change and leadership comes from, and that's what makes the school feel safe, but what makes the school feel stronger. And what we try very hard to do is develop that mutual appreciation and that mutual trust across every layer of the school. An appreciation that we're all different, but we're all equally valued, regardless of what it is that we do.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you.